Imagine two distinct underwater societies existing side by side, sharing the exact same ocean, but living in entirely different realities. In the shallow shoals, daily life is a constant struggle. The inhabitants face low life expectancy, fragile shelters, and a lack of basic infrastructure. Every day is focused purely on survival. Right next door sits the deep coral citadel. Here, the residents enjoy long lifespans, comprehensive education systems, and a high degree of personal freedom and political choice. Counting the total number of pearls stockpiled in their vaults only measures economic growth, a simple increase in total output. But economic development is a broader, qualitative concept. It measures the actual standard of living. It looks at how well a country reduces poverty, improves healthcare, and raises the overall well-being of its citizens. To understand why some countries thrive, like the Citadel, while others struggle, like the Shoals, we have to look at the four specific forces driving this massive divide in living standards. In the Shoals, the workforce relies almost entirely on slow, manual labor. Lacking advanced tools, their output per worker hour is incredibly low. This low productivity is directly tied to low national income. When workers produce very little, their real income per head stays depressed. This traps the economy in a vicious circle of poverty. Low incomes leave citizens with almost zero money to save. Without savings, banks have no funds to lend businesses. Without loans, there's no investment in better tools, ensuring productivity stays low. The Citadel breaks this cycle using capital equipment. Workers have access to the latest automated systems, drastically multiplying what a single person can harvest hourly. High productivity generates higher incomes. Those higher incomes leave room for surplus savings, which flow into the banking system and get reinvested right back into even better technology. Improving access to technology and capital offers a path to disrupt this cycle and begin raising the standard of living. Even a wealthy economy is shaped by the number of people sharing that wealth. In the Shoals, the population is booming. Even if total output grows, a rapidly expanding population dilutes those gains. Real GDP per head shrinks. This creates a dependency burden, forcing a small proportion of working adults to stretch resources for dependence, pushing families toward poverty. The Citadel maintains stable population growth. This allows them to direct economic surpluses toward the quality of healthcare and education, rather than just supporting basic survival for extra members. When population growth outpaces economic growth, resources are diverted away from improving well-being and towards simply maintaining a larger number of people. The third force is the structural foundation of the economy itself. The Shoals are stuck entirely in the primary sector, relying on the raw extraction of natural resources. We see this exact dynamic in less economically developed countries. A huge portion of the labor force is tied to agricultural farming, fishing, or mining, industries that are heavily reliant on manual labor and highly vulnerable to weather and climate. As economies develop, employment shifts towards the secondary sector. Instead of just pulling raw materials out of the earth, workers use manufacturing and construction to process those materials into much higher value goods. Highly developed economies eventually make a final transition into the tertiary sector. The majority of their GDP stops coming from physical goods entirely and instead shifts to advanced services like banking and finance, healthcare, and information technology. This service-based stage is where worker incomes hit their peaks, allowing for shorter working hours and safer working conditions. Evolving an economy away from an over-reliance on volatile primary goods and toward a stable tertiary structure is one of the clearest markers of high economic development. Economists need a way to measure these vast differences in living standards between countries. The most common tool they use is national income, specifically real GDP per capita. This table compares the economic data of different nations. Look at the GDP per capita column. You can see a massive disparity, with the UK and Japan generating tens of thousands of dollars more per person than developing economies like Brazil or Georgia. However, you have to be careful with these numbers. A high real GDP per head does not guarantee a high standard of living for the majority of the population. Total GDP figures often hide severe income inequalities. A country's national income might look huge on paper, but if that wealth is hoarded by a tiny fraction of society, the average citizen might still be living in poverty. Rapid economic growth can also produce negative consequences that degrade the quality of life. An industrial boom might raise GDP, but if it creates severe pollution, climate change, and environmental damage, the citizens' actual well-being drops. While income is a useful baseline, measuring true economic development requires examining qualitative factors, like how evenly that income is distributed and the health of the natural environment. Bridging the gap between impoverished and wealthy nations requires deliberate, structural changes to how an economy operates. It requires investing in technology to boost worker productivity, stabilizing population growth to manage dependency burdens, and shifting the workforce out of raw extraction and into higher-value manufacturing and services. True economic development is about shifting the currents of a society to lift the standard of living for everyone, turning raw economic potential into a sustainable, high-quality world.